The Deadly Fire. On May 28, 1977, the Beverly Hills Super Club was occupied by an estimated 3,000 people. Many different events were occurring that evening, from dinner parties, an award banquet, and also a performance by entertainer John Davidson. All of these events caused major overcrowding at the venue that included seating in exit ramps, aisles, and doorways throughout the venue. Keep in mind, the Super Club had been remodeled and many things were changed since the original building had been constructed in the early 1900s, after a previous fire caused the building to change owners and sit vacant over many years. Events that occurred: 8:30 p.m. Following a wedding reception that took place in the Zebra Room, guests were reported the room was very warm, no smell of smoke at this time. 8:56 p.m. Two employees reported to find heavy smoke at the ceiling to the Zebra Room. 9:01 p.m. The fire department was notified, and during this time, the management used fire extinguishers in an attempt to contain the fire, which was uncontrollable. 9:06 p.m. A busboy by the name of Walter Bailey interrupted the show in the cabaret room to inform patrons to evacuate. 9:10 p.m. Power to the building failed, causing lights to go out. People inside began to panic, causing a mad dash for the limited exits. 11:30 p.m. Fire officials ordered all firefighters out of the building in fear that the roof would collapse, which it did around midnight.
As you can see from the layout, the Supper Club was a very large building containing 16 exits. When the fire was first discovered in the Zebra Room, it only took a few minutes for it to travel down the hall and engulf the Cabaret Room with an estimated 1,000 people, giving them very little time to exit through the three exit doors and find their way out of the building. Studies show that the building would have needed a total of 27 exits to comply with the fire code in regards to the amount of occupants that were in the building.
The Cabaret Room. When panic occurred in the Cabaret Room following the notification of fire from the busboy, people aggressively made their way toward the three exit doors, two which became blocked by the fire, leaving only one exit. The amount of patrons trying to flee caused a trample of people, ending in a large jam in the only exit. Employees attempted to free patrons from the pileup, but the amount of pressure made it impossible to pull people out of the crushing pile to safety. Before long, temperatures in the Cabaret Room reached well over 1,000 degrees, making any rescue impossible.
On the following morning, May 29th, the bodies of 134 people were removed from the building and taken to the Fort Thomas Armory, which was the makeshift morgue. Continuing on to June 1st, an additional 28 bodies were removed, and following the fire, there was 3 smoke inhalation-related deaths, bringing the death toll to 165.
There were multiple violations in the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, one of which was faulty wiring. Most, if not all, of the wiring in the Supper Club was described as an electrical nightmare and should have never been passed. Also, there were lack of firewalls, allowing oxygen to feed the fire and increase the spread. The fire actually smoldered undiscovered above the ceiling or between the walls of a small room at the front of the building for several hours, and after the fire was discovered, it began to spread rapidly in 3 different directions. Also, there were limited fire exits. Most exits were not clearly marked, and the building only had enough exits for half the patrons to properly exit. For example, in the Cabaret Room, 50 patrons became lost in dense smoke while attempting to reach the exit, either because they made a wrong turn in the first instance or because they missed the second turn and wandered away from safety. Overcrowding was a huge issue in the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. At the time of the fire, the Cabaret Room contained almost 3 times the number of occupants that the space could safely accommodate. At the time of the fire, the entire facility contained almost twice the number of occupants that the facility could safely accommodate, and the capacity of the means of egress for the facility, and especially the cabaret room, was not adequate for the occupant load when calculated based on the square feet per person or the actual number of occupants. Several recommendations and changes were made after this fire, one of which was new assembly occupancies with occupant load exceeding 300 were required for the first time to be sprinklered. The building had no fire alarm or sprinkler system and no emergency evacuation plans. Few employees knew where the fire extinguishers were located, and fewer still were trained to use them properly. Another change was that both new and existing assembly occupancies with occupant load exceeding 300 were required for the first time to have a fire alarm system complete with a voice message form of occupant notification. Another recommendation was the use of firewalls in the construction of the building to limit fire spread, as well as adequate amount of clearly marked fire exits. The last recommendation was to make sure that overcrowding was avoided by making sure that exit routes, aisles, and doorways were not blocked.